Hey everyone, this is Michael again, and welcome to the AEW Dynamite review. And tonight's Dynamite was from the Watsco Center in Miami, Florida. And this was Bash at the Beach for Dynamite tonight. And Bash at the Beach is a former WCW pay-per-view name. And Dynamite and AEW used it tonight for their Dynamite show. And the show tonight was a good show. This was a enjoyable, good show. This was much better than last week's Dynamite, and it was, just an entertaining show. Of course, we had a number one contenders match, tag team match. Kenny Omega and Hangman Adam Page versus Matt and Nick Jackson, the best friends, Chuck Taylor and Trent, which they came out along with Orange Cassidy, of course. You had Santana and Ortiz. And you had Jon Moxley versus Sammy Guevara. And in the main event, you had Pac versus Darby Allin. And the winners of those matches will get to face each other next week on Dynamite, which is going to be on the Jericho Cruise, which I'm not too sure if they're going to film Dynamite live on the Jericho Cruise or it's going to be taped. And they're calling it Bash at the Beach Part 2 for next week's Dynamite. But who knows if it's going to be live or, it's going to be taped. Of course, like I said, they're going to be on the Jericho Cruise. But before I get into the review tonight, a couple of things have happened in the world of professional wrestling today. On sad news, pretty sure you all have heard, Rocky Johnson, who is The Rock, Dwayne Johnson's father, passed away sadly today. He was 75 years old. There's no information on what he passed away from, but thoughts and prayers go out to The Rock's family. So really sad news. Rocky Johnson is a WWE Hall of Famer. He went to the Hall of Fame in 2008. And, just really sad. So, like I said, thoughts and prayers go out to The Rock's family. And also, news coming out today is it was announced that AEW has gotten a multi-year deal with TNT. So they are good up until 2023. And it was also revealed that they might expand to 2 nights. So that is really cool. Of course, they're probably going to have Dynamite on Wednesday, and they might, give a new show for AEW under a new name. So I know they have AEW Dark, which is on YouTube, which haven't checked out. So, but I know they shoot AEW Dark before Dynamite goes live. So that's good news, for us AEW fans. But yeah, AEW is good on TNT up until 2023. But anyways, let's get on with the Dynamite Bash at the Beach review. So, Dynamite Open got a, they showed a, still, of Rocky Johnson, in honor, of Rocky Johnson. Sadly, like I said, passed away. He passed away today. So after that graphic, was shown, we went right into the arena, and I really liked how the way the stage was set for Dynamite, for the Bash at the Beach. Of course, you had a female, lifeguard, sitting in the lifeguard chair, wearing, bathing suit bra. You had a beach ball in there, surfboards. It was really cool how the way, the stage was designed tonight, which I really liked. So then Dynamite kicked off with the first match, and it was the Double Contenders match. It was a four-way. Kenny Omega and Hangman Adam Page versus Matt and Nick Jackson, Best Friends, Trent and Chuck Taylor, and Santana and Ortiz. And this was an awesome match. This was, in my opinion, the best match of the night. The crowd was hyped all through this match. They were behind every guy in this match. You had, Nick Jackson laying super kicks. Matt Jackson laid, super kicks also. And we had Matt Jackson end up hitting 4 Northern Lights suplexes to Trent, which looked amazing. Liked how the way Matt Jackson got in those Northern Lights suplexes. And there was a point where he was going to go for a 5th Northern Lights suplex, and Trent ended up countering that into a tornado DDT, which was awesome. Then Chuck Taylor came in because Trent ended up tagging him in. Taylor went for a belly-to-belly suplex to Matt Jackson, and he ended up hitting a sit-down powerbomb also to Matt Jackson. Ortiz got in there because Chuck Taylor was going for the pin. Ortiz came in, broke up the pinfall. You had Kenny Omega in there. Kenny Omega ended up planting Trent. Hangman Adam Page ended up hitting a standing moonsault, which Hangman Adam Page, when he hits that moonsault, it is, really good. Probably, good moonsault that he does. I'd say it's way better than, I know it's, not, comparison, because I was going to say his moonsault is better than when Charlotte does her moonsault. So, but Hangman Adam Page has the better moonsault. Kenny Omega then ended up hitting a moonsault also, which was cool. And then we see Hangman Adam Page. He then hits another moonsault out to the floor. Takes out everyone, which was cool. And we had Matt Jackson. He ended up heading to the top rope. He ended up getting chopped by Trent. Trent then ended up hitting a superplex on everyone, which was cool. Referee was knocked down, and we had 8 guys in the ring. They were looking to do a big suplex, and neither of the guys could have lifted each other. And so Orange Cassidy comes in. Crowd popped for Orange Cassidy when he made his way into the ring, and he ended up helping, his side, with the Best Friends, and a suplex was hit, with Orange Cassidy's help to the guys in there. And Orange Cassidy, after he helps, his guys end up hitting the suplex, and all, the 8 guys got suplexed. Orange Cassidy then popped up with his hands in his pocket, and Trent and Chuck Taylor, they went to the side and they set up a hug. So it was Trent and Chuck Taylor ended up hugging Orange Cassidy, which got a pop from the crowd. And then right from there, Matt and Nick Jackson were throwing super kicks to their opponents. And in the end, Kenny Omega and Hangman Adam Page won the match. They ended up pinning a buckshot lariat and a V-trigger combo on Chuck Taylor. So there you go. Hangman Adam Page and Kenny Omega win the match. They get to face SCU next week for the AEW World Tag Team Championship. So that's going to be taking place next week. So, but all in all, awesome match. The best match of the night. The crowd was, hyped up all through this match. And, all these guys here, they gave it all they got in the match. They put on one hell of a awesome match. And then it was announced that, by the announcers that Pac was going to be facing Darby Allin, which was the main event, and Jon Moxley versus Sammy Guevara. And the winners of those matches will face each other next week on the Jericho Cruise to determine the number one contender for the AEW World title, to face Chris Jericho for the AEW World title. I mean, in my opinion, I know the 2 guys who were gonna win the match before before both of those matches got started. So, I'll get to them in a minute. So then after, the commentators, Jim Ross, Excalibur, Tony Schiavone announced those 2 matches that we were going to see tonight. We had Cody Rhodes. Cody Rhodes ended up coming out to talk about MJF. Cody got a pop from the crowd, and he got on the mic, and he ended up saying, a few weeks ago, he asked MJF what it would take to have a match. Cody ended up then running down the 3 stipulations MJF made that he has to follow before he has a match at Revolution against MJF. Cody ends up saying that he can't touch MJF at all. He has to face Warlow in a steel cage match. And this was coming from, MJF, when MJF mentioned all this, for, Cody to do all this before, Cody takes on MJF. So MJF ended up, saying, that Cody couldn't touch him, and that Cody had to face Warlow in a steel cage match, and then take 10 lashings from MJF. So Cody ended up running all of them down, and Cody then ends up saying that MJF is just stalling. And he goes on, he makes fun of MJF, for, MJF being on the Rosie O'Donnell show when he was a kid, which I did see the clip of that, because somebody in a group on social media posted that. And I know MJF, denied it from what I heard, saying that, oh, it wasn't him, but obvious, it was him. So, saw the clip of that. It was a cute clip, with MJF when he was a kid. He was, doing a little, opera singing. So I know he's pissed off. He's still pissed off at Rosie O'Donnell because from in the clip, Rosie O'Donnell gave him like a certificate, like money certificate for WWF New York. If you lived here in New York back in the early 2000s in Times Square, there was a place called WWF New York, and it's been closed for years, and it is now, of course, the Hard Rock Cafe. And originally, from what I heard, MJF, was going to go to the WWF New York. Rosie O'Donnell gave him that, and I guess after that show aired, WWF New York closed, and so now, and MJF, was like to Rosie O'Donnell, oh, you still owe me, money from, from that, since he never got a chance to go to WWF New York, because it closed. So, that was pretty much the clip. The clip is on YouTube. If you guys want to check it out. So Cody ended up mentioning, that with MJF being on the Rosie O'Donnell show back in the day. He ended up saying that MJF is lazy. He says it's not less is more, and that he's capable of much more. And so Cody ends up accepting all those terms. And he says, he will face Warlow in a steel cage. But it was an enjoyable segment from Cody. Just acknowledging MJF's, terms and, what he has to do to get a match against MJF, which will happen at Revolution, which is the next AEW pay-per-view. And then after Cody ended up, ending the segment, we saw Joey Janela. Joey Janela ended up saying that this year is a new year for him. Janela ended up saying that, the first time, he shows up, he gets low-blowed by his ex-girlfriend. Janela ended up saying the only way she can get herself over is using his name. And he's ended up talking about Penelope Ford. Penelope Ford is his ex-girlfriend. And Janela then ended up asking Kip Sabian if he wants to play and that he should cross the line. And Janela says next week he will be facing Phoenix of the Lucha Brothers. So this could be setting up, Joey Janela versus Kip Sabian. Could be a decent match between the both of them. So that was the promo that Joey Janela cut. And we went from that, and we went to the women's match. Kris Statlander and Hikaru Shida versus Brandi Rhodes and Mel of the Nightmare Collective. And my God, this match was terrible. This match was fucking awful. And the crowd was dead throughout this whole match. I'm like, how do you go from the first match that we had, the number one contenders match, and the crowd was hyped all through that match. And then the women's match comes on, and the crowd is dead silent. This means that the fans, the AEW fans, don't care for this match, for this women's match. I mean, the women's division on AEW is not that great. It needs to be better. But like I said, this match was terrible. Of course, Brandi, Rhodes, and Mel came down, of course, with Luther, who we were introduced to last week. So, Hikaru Shida ends up coming out, and she ends up coming out with a kendo stick. She hits Luther with the kendo stick before making her way down. And, it was just back and forth between the woman. And this is the first time we see Mel in in-ring action. And she was okay here in the match. She wasn't, perfect or great by any means here. But Awesome Kong wasn't even down there tonight. But Kris Statlander and Hikaru Shida got the win. We had Kris Statlander end up countering a pile driver, and she ended up went for the cover. And Kris Statlander, Hikaru Shida win the match. Match was god awful, terrible. But the AEW Women's Division needs work, because this Women's Division is terrible. Then we had the Dark Order spokesman ends up saying that the group has taken in literally thousands of recruits, of potential recruits. And he ends up bringing up Michael Nakazawa and says they've seen his desire to want to win. And this spokesman is actually talking to a extended one. And this one asked about Kenny Omega, which obvious Kenny Omega is not going to join the Dark Order. Kenny Omega is not that stupid. So the spokesman ended up saying, maybe through Nakazawa, they could reach Omega. And so Brandon Cutler was then shown. He ends up saying that he has a strong alliance to the Elite. He said the Dark Order can do more for him. He ends up saying that, Hangman Adam Page could be another target. So, with this whole talk about Hangman Adam Page turn heel, maybe, just maybe, it's my prediction, I may be wrong on it. Maybe they have Hangman Adam Page turn heel, and maybe Hangman will join the Dark Order. That's just my opinion, my prediction. Maybe wrong on it, but we'll have to wait and see. And then we saw, after the Dark Order promo, we saw Jon Moxley versus Sammy Guevara, which the match itself, it was a decent match. And Jon Moxley, how the way he made his way out, he came into the arena driving, the Ford GT, which, he took, the keys last week. If you guys saw the main event of Dynamite. So him driving out in that Ford GT was cool. That car, was great looking, amazing. And Moxley ended up, getting in the ring. Guevara ended up going right after him. Got a few punches in. And Moxley was just throwing, chops at Guevara. And there was a point where Guevara went to the top, hits a double stomp onto Moxley's chest. He then threw Moxley into steel steps on the outside. Moxley ended up taking control of the match. Moxley then ended up heading up to the top rope. Guevara runs up, and what was really cool was Guevara ended up hitting a Spanish fly to Moxley. Moxley gets up, goes to hit the paradigm shift, but eats a jumping knee from Guevara. And how the match ended was Moxley ended up locking in a rear naked choke to Sammy Guevara. Guevara ended up tapping out. So you go, Jon Moxley wins the match. The match was decent. But what happened post-match, Chris Jericho's music ended up hitting. Lights went out. When the lights came back on, we saw Jericho, Jake Hager, Santana, Ortiz. They were all in the ring. Sammy Guevara was still in the ring, so all the inner circle was in there. So they all take down Moxley. And the only reason why the group beat up on Moxley is for what Moxley, did last week, because Moxley ended up swerving the inner circle, and Jericho and all of them thought that Moxley would join the inner circle, which, he did, but Moxley ended up tricking them, ended up tricking Jericho. So Jericho ended up whipping Moxley with the AEW title. Hager then ended up hitting a running knee into Moxley. And Santana and Ortiz then held it up Moxley. Sammy Guevara ended up slapping Moxley in the face. And Jericho takes one of the spikes off his jacket, which he was wearing a jacket with all spikes on it. So he took a spike off his jacket. And Jericho then jabs the spike right into Moxley's forehead. And Moxley was selling, the eye, was selling the eye. Like Jericho ended up, sticking, the spike in Moxley's eye. So Moxley was just selling that. So referees end up coming down, try to get control. A physician comes and checks on Moxley. Inner Circle ends up leaving. So pretty much that's basically what happened, after the match. But it was crazy, with Jericho taking the spike, jabbing it into Moxley. But, it sets up more for their feud. So Dynamite went to commercial after that. Then when Dynamite came back, we saw, referees and, the physician helping Moxley to the back. And then we went backstage. Jennifer Decker was interviewing Jericho about what he and, the other members of the Inner Circle did to Moxley. Jericho ends up telling her that this is not the Inner Circle's fault. Jericho said that they offered Moxley the chance to join the Inner Circle. And he said that Moxley ended up saying no. And, then he smashed a bottle on his head, over his head, Moxley did. So Jericho ends up saying that, Moxley is taking out whoever, Moxley is taking Allin. Whoever wins between Pac and Darby Allin will go right to him. So Jericho ends up heading off. Hager ends up saying, "R," and holds his eye. Guevara ends up looking at Jennifer Decker. Guevara ends up going, "Hit me up." So he wants Jennifer Decker to hit him up. Now it's basically, what happened backstage. So then after the interview with Chris Jericho in the Circle, we had a 6-man tag. We had the Butcher, the Blade, and MJF versus DDP, QT Marshall, and Dustin Rhodes. And this was a good match. This was a very entertaining match. The wrestling here was really good. MJF, guy is money for AEW. He plays a great heel, like his cockiness that he does. And Dustin Rhodes still could move in the ring at his age, also along with DDP. DDP shows that he still has it, even, at his age now. But the match started off with MJF and DDP in the ring. MJF ended up tagging in the Butcher because MJF wanted nothing to do with DDP. DDP ends up tagging in QT Marshall. And then MJF ends up tagging back in. So it's MJF and QT Marshall in the ring. They started off, had some counters. MJF ends up going to look for a handshake. He thought QT Marshall was going to give him, a handshake. QT Marshall ends up flipping off MJF, which was hilarious. And MJF got pissed. So MJF delivers a thumb to the eye to QT Marshall. The Blade ends up tagging back in, starts kicking away on QT Marshall, and he's able to tag in Dustin Rhodes. Dustin Rhodes comes in, starts working on the Blade, and then we see Dustin gets hit in the face with the AEW diamond ring that MJF, wears. So the Blade was able to take advantage of the match. The Blade ended up sending Dustin Rhodes out to the floor. The Bunny, aka Allie, was out there. She ends up slapping Dustin in the face. Warlow ends up coming in, ends up delivering a boot to Dustin's face. Then it went to commercial, and during the split screen commercial break, we had the Butcher, the Blade, and MJF take control. MJF was beating up on Dustin Rhodes. The Butcher ended up taking out QT Marshall, and DDP ends up coming into the ring, and he finally gets his hands on MJF, ends up delivering a big clothesline, and he ends up throwing MJF into the turnbuckle. He ends up dropping the Butcher with the lariat, and he ends up delivering the same lariat to the Blade. And the crowd popped for DDP. DDP, like I said, he can still move in the ring at his age. Still has it. DDP ended up hitting a diamond cutter on the Butcher. And he ended up going out to the floor. Tries to hit the diamond cutter to MJF. MJF reverses it and low blows DDP. And the referee didn't even catch it. So DDP ends up tagging in Dustin. And Dustin ends up hitting a Canadian Destroyer from the second rope, which looked awesome. And then we had at the end of the match, QT Marshall was back in the ring. MJF ends up rolling him up for the win. So MJF, the Butcher, and the Blade win the match. Overall, good match. Very entertaining match. And then we saw after the match was over, we went backstage. SCU were being interviewed. They were being interviewed about their match against Kenny Omega and Hangman Adam Page next week. And then we see Hangman Adam Page comes up, looked like he was drunk, and he gets some of his drink all over Christopher Daniels. SCU didn't appreciate that. Kenny Omega ends up calming him down, and he ends up saying that he's looking forward to the match next week. And I think it's going to be a really awesome match between SCU, Kenny Omega, and Hangman Adam Page next week. Calling it right now, I think SCU is going to retain. That's my prediction heading into next week. And then it was announced that on February 19th, it's going to be Cody versus Warlow in a steel cage. So that's going to be that's going to be an awesome match. It's going to be Warlow's debut in the ring, in-ring debut. Looking forward to that. And so then we had the main event, Pac versus Darby Allin. And the winner of that match will get to, move on in the number one contender match. Jon Moxley ended up winning his match, ended up defeating Sammy Guevara. So, which, I knew it was predictable. I knew Moxley was going to win. So it was Pac versus Darby Allin here. Match itself, it was a good match. This was the main event. And, this match was worthy, main event. And so the match started out, it was a quick pace, start to the match with Pac and Darby Allin. Pac ended up hitting a tilt-a-whirl backbreaker to Darby Allin. Pac was out on the floor. Darby Allin ends up taking Pac out. Pac is sent into the ring, but he ended up rolling back out. Darby Allin ended up hitting a suicide dive. He ended up sending Pac into the barricade. Darby Allin was looking to hit a hurricanrana off the apron. Pac ended up catching him, launched Darby Allin into the steps, and Dynamite then went to commercial. Then when Dynamite came back, we saw Pac then powerbombs Darby Allin on the steps, which looked really brutal. Pac then ended up throwing Darby Allin into the barricade before Pac ended up tossing Allin back into the ring. And towards the end of the match, Pac went up to the top, ended up hitting the Black Arrow onto Darby Allin's back. Pac went for the cover. There you go. Pac ended up defeating Darby Allin. So it's going to be Pac versus Jon Moxley next week on Dynamite, which, predictable. Knew that Pac was going to win the match. So even though, I wanted to see either, him or Darby Allin win. I don't mind who wins because I like both of them. I think Pac is great in the ring, plays a good heel. Darby Allin's cool. I like how the way he rides out to the ring on his skateboard. I like the face paint that he has. Very talented. But Pac ended up winning the match. Post-match, Tony Schiavone came into the ring, ends up interviewing Pac. So Tony Schiavone ends up going to ask a question for Pac. Pac ends up telling Schiavone that he should congratulate the #1 contender. Tony Schiavone ends up saying that he still has to face, that Pac still has to face Jon Moxley. Pac ends up saying, we saw what happened, and that means that it will be a forfeit. So Pac ends up telling Jericho, I'm coming for you, Kris. So then we went backstage. We saw Moxley was being loaded into an ambulance. He had his eye covered because of what Jericho did earlier with the spike. Moxley then ended up getting out of the ambulance, walks towards the stage, and Moxley had a microphone in his hand, ends up getting on the mic, ends up saying to Pac that it ain't going down like that, brother. Moxley ended up saying that he doesn't care if he's blind or has only one eye. Moxley ends up saying that he will be there next week. So he was like, I don't care if I'm blind, if I've got one eye, no eyes. I don't care if I'm half dead, which is what Moxley said on the mic. So Moxley ended up saying that he will be there next week. So the match is going to happen, of course. Pac versus Jon Moxley. Gonna be a very entertaining match. And the outcome of that match, we all know that Moxley is going to win it. They're still doing, the Moxley and Jericho feud. And, Moxley's probably going to, take the title from Jericho. And that is how Dynamite went off the air for this week. But good show. Really liked how the way the show flowed. Take out the shitty women's match. This was a good show. This was a great show. I really like how the way they did, the bash at the beach. Like I said, the stage looked amazing. The stage looked awesome. And let's see what they're going to do next week. Like I said, they're going to be it's going to be on the Jericho Cruise. I don't know if they're going to tape it or it's going to be live. But we'll just have to wait and see next week. But anyways, that's it for the Dynamite review. Thank you all for watching. Hope you all enjoyed this review. And definitely give the video a thumbs up, comment, subscribe. And until next video, I'll see you all later.